Coming up next on Another View, the holiday blues. Does it seem that everyone around you is full of energy, running about shopping, attending holiday parties, decorating, feeling great, and you're feeling kind of sluggish, sad, out of sorts? Could you have a touch of the holiday blues? What is this feeling of lethargy? What's the difference between it and clinical depression? And why is it happening? I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Stay tuned for some answers from our guests, psychiatrist Dr. Pat King and psychologist Dr. Janis Sanchez. Another View is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Welcome to Another View. We missed you all last week, but we hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and kind of dovetails into our topic for today, because we've all experienced it, that twinge of sadness during the holidays, the time when we're supposed to be most happy and full of positive expectations. And there's a lot of pressure to make life perfect during this time of year, probably a very unrealistic goal, and many suffer for it. So what's the difference between the holiday blues and clinical depression? How do we take care of ourselves mentally, especially when culturally many African Americans are, shall we say, a little skeptical when it comes to mental health and the need for professional help? Joining me in the studio is psychiatrist Dr. Pat King. Hi, Pat.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. And psychologist Dr. Janis Sanchez. Janis, welcome back.
It's a pleasure.
To Another View, and welcome both of you to the program. So before we get started about the holidays and those type of changes, let's talk about the difference between psychology and psychiatry so that people are clear. Janis, I want to start with you. And you don't mind me calling you by your first name, right? Okay.
I'm a clinical psychologist, and what that requires typically is that you major in psychology as an undergraduate student, and you get into a clinical doctoral program. These programs typically last 5 years, and if you go for a PhD program, you're required to write an empirical dissertation. Usually after you graduate, then you go for a 2-year postdoc. You also have the option in clinical psychology to major in psychopharmacology to take these courses. And if you go through a special curriculum that's devised by national credentialing authorities, you can have the option of prescribing medication. But most clinical psychologists don't take that option. This is a program that's been prepared for a lot of places like Alaska, New Mexico, where there are not very many clinical psychologists. The other option as a clinical psychologist is to go to what we call a professional clinical psychology program. In a professional program, you get a PsyD degree. You're a clinical psychologist, but the emphasis is on practice, not so much on research, teaching, or some of the other things that we do with a PhD. The majority of clinical psychologists, though, are in practice right now, but private practice is changing because of the economy. But most clinical psychologists are in practice, and then we have people who work as faculty members, people work in hospitals, people work in private facilities. So that's sort of the rough guidelines in terms of clinical psychology.
Okay, and then psychiatry, Dr. King.
Psychiatrists are medical doctors.
Okay.
So after college, they go to medical school and just get a general medical education. They do surgery and pediatrics and family practice
you do
and
everything
OBGYN.
that a doctor would do.
And through your 4 years of medical training. And then you do 4 years of a psychiatry residency.
Okay.
And we are licensed to be therapists, so we can do therapy, but we're also licensed to prescribe medications. And that's mostly what psychiatrists do today, is prescribe medications and monitor them.
And monitor them that way. So how do you know where you need to go? If you think you have a problem, how do you know if you need a psychologist or a psychiatrist?
Well, I've actually worked with Dr. King, and I talk to people, and I really make a decision when I'm talking to someone whether or not I think this person could benefit from medication. We usually ask for what we call vegetative signs. We ask if people are waking up in the middle of the night. We're asking if people have trouble sleeping. We've asked if people have lost weight or gained weight. And all of these are indicators that the depression seems to be medical and internal. It's not just what you're feeling. When I get yes answers to some of these questions, and if someone seems extremely depressed, I will talk to them about seeing a psychiatrist to get medication.
To help them to
Yes.
start the process to get better. So could you start, Pat, with medication and then move into more of the therapy session? So maybe they could start with you and then go to a Janis
I think
type.
if people don't know where to start, they can start either place.
Right.
Because if they go to Janis and she sees that they need more than just therapy, she'll send them to me.
Right.
And if they come to me for medications and they need therapy, then I'll send them to
Right.
Janis.
Gotcha.
So they can start
Either place.
and whoever they see should be able to direct them
To the right
to
person.
the right.
But culturally, African Americans tend sometimes not to want to go see either one of you because we as a people overall, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way at all, but it's a lot of, take your troubles to God, stay in prayer, read the Bible, do these other types of, tough it out,
Yes.
or whatever, as opposed to seeking medical help, when the thought being, if your stomach hurt, you would go to a doctor to
Yes.
figure out why your stomach is hurting. So if you're not feeling well emotionally, is what's wrong with going?
There is resistance.
Oh, yes.
Definitely in our community and in African American culture. And I think I see the most resistance amongst African American males.
Yes.
Because they feel like they can handle their own problems. Why do
Right.
I need to tell you about my problems? How can you help me? I can deal with it myself. Or they think it's associated with being a weak person,
Yes.
so they don't seek help. But I see that African American women seem more likely to come and get help, especially if they think their children are suffering
That's
with a mental health illness.
That's exactly what I was going to say,
ahead,
is that a lot of times I think African American women are reluctant to come for therapy, but if there's a child that's hurting, they put aside all of their barriers and they will come. If you're having trouble in school, if the child's depressed, if the child doesn't have friends, people will come and seek help. But I've had people come to me and say, well, can't you give me some medicine? Or can't you give my child medicine? And then I have to explain what a psychologist does and what a psychiatrist does. So many people come to me expecting that I can give medicine, and I tell them that I cannot.
And it's more than just a cure. I'll take a pill and everything's okay.
No, absolutely. And I was going to say, I just wanted to comment on what you said earlier. The moms will bring the kids in, and that's the ticket to get help for the family.
Yes.
Because then you can, lure the mom in and then have her to maybe lure the dad in. Because
Yes.
usually the whole family is involved when
Right.
there's one person who's identified.
So when we talk about the we talked about the
Sure.
holiday blues to kind of kick off the show, but how do you know if you're just sad versus you really are facing some depression? And why does it seem to manifest itself in such a way during the holidays? Janis, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Well, number one, I'm really concerned about the fact that African American females take on too much.
She's pointing at us.
Both of you, because you guys are guilty of that. There's been research that has asked people if they were given one more requirement, one more thing to do, how would they handle it? Other people would cut back. Other people would try to give up some of what they're doing. But what they found this research is if you have more to do, African American women will get up earlier, they'll stay up later, they will just take on more. And that's why I'm particularly concerned about the holidays, because there's so much to do. And I think I've seen too many African American women knock themselves out, staying up, shopping, spending more money than what they have, exhausting themselves with cooking, with cleaning, with trying to arrange schedules with relatives to keep everybody happy.
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about that.
So I'm very concerned about how African American women are setting themselves up for distress. I do think that when the holidays come, it's normal to think about the past and to think about relatives and loved ones who are no longer with us. But I think that sadness is manageable. I think that, we've talked before about the fact that the highest risk time for suicide really is like April, May.
There's a lot of thought that it's during this time of the year.
I think a lot of people worry about the holidays and say, oh, gee, I'm concerned about this person. She may be suicidal. There might be a risk of suicide at the holidays, but the major risk seems to come in the spring. It seems to be when people are depressed, and they've been depressed for a while, and then when spring comes, trees are blooming, flowers are growing, the weather is warm. It seems as though the contrast between their internal state and what's happening all around them make them give up. So I think that suicide, really, we're most concerned about that in the spring of the year. But I'm concerned about women of color particularly who push themselves to take on too much during this time of year. They don't sleep, they're not eating properly, or if they're eating, they're grabbing snacks, high fat, drinking. And I think a lot of times we do like little glasses of wine and we think, oh, we're okay. But I think these are all negative behaviors. I think it's really important for African American women to delegate, to do half as much as what you think you want to do, to ask your children to assist, to get your partners involved. You have to cut the list down, because if you follow the list, you're going to set yourself for exhaustion.
So that superwoman syndrome is right
It's
there.
very much the case.
I'm just going to get right to you. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Give us a call. Let us know how you are handling stress during this holiday season. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240.
I just want to say that I think the holidays are a time of reflection for a lot of people. And, they become more aware of their losses and things in their lives that aren't what they want them to be.
Yes.
And so it can create some sadness. But to answer your question, it tends to be fleeting. You reflect and you're sad and you deal with it and you move on. If it's persistent, it lasts for 2 weeks or more. If you start having neurovegetative signs, like Janis was saying, they're not eating, they're not sleeping, they're not functioning, they're psychotic, they start hearing voices or seeing things, or they're suicidal, then you know it's more than just the holiday blues. And it's beginning to sound more and more like a clinical depression that needs to be addressed professionally.
Yes.
So if you see that in someone that you love or someone that you're close to, how do you encourage them to go and get that help?
I would just, a lot of times I really think it's important to go with someone because I guess my own issues, I don't feel that the person will necessarily go into detail about what we're seeing. So I think that if you're concerned about someone, I would ask the person to call and make an appointment. And
so if it's my friend, I should be the one to call and make the appointment.
No, I want the friend to call.
You want the friend to do it,
because it doesn't work unless the person who is actually in need calls.
Got you.
But I would try to stay with the person, ask the person, I want to listen to it if they're comfortable with it, and I would go with them. I don't want to go into the session with the individual, but I want to support that person in going to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist so that person can get the help that they need. And it's really important that you pay attention to the signs that we both talked about, because somebody who does not get attention could actually make a suicide attempt.
You want to add to that?
I was going to say, I just think it's an important time for people to utilize their resources and their support systems, like Janis is saying. If they're in a crisis situation, who can you depend on to help you with the phone calls or help you with your task chores, getting you to the appointments that you have set up to see your psychologist or psychiatrist. So support systems are really important during the holidays.
I wanted to comment on the support systems because I see patients, and I just talked to 2 people this week, and I asked them, who comprises your support system? And there are people out there who don't have a group of friends that they can really call and talk to when they're having any type of crisis. And I think it's really important that everybody has 2 or 3 people that you could talk to about anything that's going on in your life. This is something you need to plan on.
What is it about talking about it that helps you? I mean, I guess it allows you to kind of get some of the emotions outside of yourself. Is that because I think a lot of people are skeptical sometimes because we talk a lot about talking about it and they don't quite understand. Like you were saying, African American men, for example, saying, I don't need to come talk to you about my problems. I can handle my problems. So what is it about human beings and being able to communicate that makes us feel better?
I think it relieves some of the shame and some of the guilt that's associated with their situation, their experiences, that kind of thing. And it's therapeutic to be able to open up and share with someone. That's just a therapeutic process, to be able to share. And people who hold on to their emotions and hold on to things in a secretive manner, like people who've been abused, those people tend to become more depressed over time. They tend to internalize things. So we want to try to get people to let go of that, to discuss it, to talk about it, to work through some of those feelings. And that's where the talking and therapy is really helpful.
I think that Pat is exactly right. I think a lot of the reason why people don't want to go out and talk is because they have the sense of shame about what's going on. I've met so many African-American women in therapy who have been abused, but they've never talked about it to anybody else because they blamed themselves. And I really ask for people to tell someone that they trust about any kind of abuse.
And that's critical. There's someone that they trust.
Yes, but I think you have to have people in your life that you can trust to talk to about personal issues. And then you can talk to them and get these feelings out. And hopefully this person will refer them to a psychologist or a therapist, psychiatrist, somebody who could help facilitate the healing.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. If you have questions about how to manage stress during the holidays or at any time for that matter, give us a call and let's speak with our experts, Dr. Janis Sanchez and Dr. Pat King. 440-2665, 1-800-940-2240. Okay, let's talk about something very specific for the holidays. That is an issue that I just recently faced, and I think a lot of married couples will face, and that is, how do you balance where you're going for the holidays and how do you keep everybody's family happy, especially if you're traveling out of town. How do you set expectations? Janice, you want to start?
I think that this is a battle that almost every married couple goes through. I think that probably the most important factor is for you and your partner to sit down and to talk about what you two want to do. And then I think you need to make a decision that both of you are comfortable on, and then you tell people this is the way it's going to be. I've been there. I've tried to negotiate, and I've had miserable vacations. I think that probably we could have avoided that if we had actually sat down and decided what we wanted to do. I think things got better once we decided to just stay home and have people come to us. That was our solution.
Especially when you have small children.
That's the excuse you can use.
It's so hectic when you have to get them up and open the gifts that you wrapped all night.
Yes.
And then you have to go to the father's house and the mother's house and visit the cousins. And it's a very stressful day when you have to do that. So I agree with Janice. I think the two people in charge, the authority figures, have to come together on that. And then compromise. We'll spend a few hours on Christmas Eve with one family. We'll spend a few hours on Christmas with the other family. Right. So negotiating and compromising, I think, are real important tools.
Okay. Daniel joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Daniel. You're on the air.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to say I'm not ashamed to talk about my problems and weaknesses and stuff, but I am ashamed to pay somebody to listen to me talk about my problems. Imagine if I had to pay my friends $20 each, to listen to my problems. And then you said you should have 4 or 5 people you can talk to and stuff, but once you get to a certain point in your life and you don't have those 4 or 5 people, well, what are you supposed to do? I guess besides pay somebody, which to me has the greater stigma attached to it.
Okay.
Sure, I'll be happy to handle that. Basically, there are lots of options. First of all, if you have any insurance, do you have any insurance at all?
Oh, he's gone.
Okay. Well, I'm saying if you have insurance, then that's a possibility to use your insurance. I also find that many practitioners will work on establishing a fee that is affordable. We also have community resources. So for someone who wants to see therapy, you can see a therapist for like $5 or $10 a clinical hour. So I don't think that money should be a reason for anybody not to see a therapist.
And also some of the churches offer counseling services as well. So if you're having some financial difficulty, that might be an option worth exploring as well.
So they don't necessarily have to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but there are also other types of people who can do counseling. Is that
absolutely?
There are social workers, there are nurses, there are priests, ministers, but some of these folks only will do short-term. If they see the need, they will then refer you to someone else.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Give us a call if you have any questions for our psychologist or our psychiatrist who joins us today. This year in particular, the economic situation is a big stressor for a lot of people. There are people who have spouses who are unemployed, people who are unemployed themselves, and so forth. And there's all this pressure to buy to make everybody happy for the holidays. How do you deal with that stress, Pat?
And
let's start with you.
What I'm saying to my patients is Christmas is really not about how much stuff you can buy and how many material things you can give to your children. What about buying some baking goods and bake for the holidays? Do some things that you can involve your kids in. You know, you can go for walks together. You can go caroling. You can visit the neighbors with small tokens that you've baked. It doesn't have to be about spending an awful lot of money. It's about the time you spend together. You know, you can watch some movies on TV together and have some apple cider. So I'm encouraging them to do things that aren't costly.
Barbara joins us. Hi, Barbara, from Newport News. Hi, Barbara. You're on the air.
Well, thank you so much. I'm enjoying this. I'm so glad you're talking about the stress that holidays bring on, because I had a lot of it. I raised 2 daughters all by myself, and I spent a great deal of time trying to make Christmas, you know, and I saw my mother struggle through making Christmas, you know, and I realized, you know, after a lot of analogy and just, you know, quiet time that it's, you know, it's much better to see the spirit and to teach your children about the spirit of Christmas and the real process and what it's all about. The issue is not materialism, but about looking inward and learning how to give 365 days a year, you know, of yourself, which is what we all do anyway. But I teach my children not to stress it. If you can make a Christmas, you do it. But if you can't, you have to look inward.
Absolutely.
You know, look inward and find the spiritual value, you know, within all of you, within the family. You know, I let my grandchildren send pictures of Christmas trees they've drawn, you know, to their mother who is overseas, you know, and little things like that, or take them to the Salvation Army and help them to serve a meal.
That's exactly what I was thinking. That's excellent.
So just another way to celebrate the holidays, being more importantly to be together than to have material things. Barbara, thanks so much for your call. We appreciate that.
I was just thinking that one of the things that she said was, I think going to a shelter and helping to prepare and serve food on Christmas Day is a great gift. I think even if your funds are limited, making sure you're giving money to your church or to a charity. I think going to the Salvation Army is a wonderful idea. I think volunteering and spending your time giving to people who are even feeling more need than you are is a great way to reinforce the spirit of the holiday.
And it also helps you to get outside of yourself.
Exactly.
Does it not? Okay. Mitzi joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Mitzi. You're on the air.
Yes. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Great. This is a great topic, and I just wanted to weigh in. I wanted to just say to Dr. Sanchez and Dr. King-Jones, I think highly of you and have made referrals to both of you. So this is a great topic. And I certainly echo what you said about being able to, for persons to be able to receive therapy even if they don't have the ability to pay. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I practice at Renew Counseling Center, which is part of First Baptist Church, Butte Street.
Yes.
And so it's very exciting to be able to be in that setting, to be able to offer a sliding fee scale to persons who don't have the ability to pay. I mean, my sliding fee scale is 50 cents to $20 an hour, and I have some people who don't pay at all, because the emphasis really is on healing and helping and persons moving to a different emotional space in their life.
Mitzi, let me ask you, do you notice a difference in clientele during this time of the year?
I certainly do. I think persons are much more lonely. Persons are much more fearful. Persons just have a lot going on, and I think the holidays just increases the stress that persons are already dealing with in their life. Absolutely.
Very true.
Thank you so much for calling, Mitzi. We appreciate the call.
Thanks for the referrals.
Thank you for the referrals.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. We are talking with Dr. Janis Sanchez, who is a psychologist, and Dr. Pat King, who is a psychiatrist. And we're talking about ways to take care of ourselves mentally during this holiday season. Eric joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Eric. You're on the air.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely.
I was listening, and I definitely understand about holiday stress, but I'm actually in graduate school, so I know about all the other types of stress that we have. And so I wanted to ask the psychologist and psychiatrist, what are some really practical ways of dealing with stress? Not just, I know I would maybe suggest exercise to someone right off the bat, but what are some other things that maybe you two would suggest?
Okay. Well, I think Pat and I both can talk about being in graduate school, so we can empathize with the stress there. But I think that the holidays are a time to probably leave the books alone. I think it's really important to take a break from academic stress. I think it's important to, you said that you know about exercise and eating healthy, but I think sometimes I'm going to just throw out meditation. I think meditation is something that is new to many African American people, but just sitting down in a quiet place, closing your eyes, and just taking a few minutes just to reflect and trying not to think about something. I think that's one thing you can do that is very easy. I think sometimes taking a book that you'd like to read is good. What I'm basically advocating at times is moving away from the hubbub, moving away from other people who are trying to get you to do other things, and just taking some quiet time for yourself. So I think that's one of the things that you're just bombarded with people and noise. Move away from that. Get some peace. Get some quiet. Do some self-reflection.
And get some sleep.
Yes.
That's the other thing that's very important in coping with stress, is making sure that you get some sleep, especially if you're a graduate student.
Yes.
Definitely.
Definitely easier said than done.
I know.
Good luck to you.
Eric, we appreciate the phone call. Sleep sleep changes in your sleeping pattern is another sign of depression, is it not? Or can be.
And it can be either extreme. It can be you can't sleep, you can't fall asleep, or you're waking up frequently in the middle of the night, or you wake up really early in the morning, can't get back to sleep, or you're sleeping too much. So either extreme.
Either one. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Give us a call and let us know if you have some ways of coping with stress during the holidays. What about our kids? How do we keep them balanced especially during this time of year, and in terms of managing expectations, because they see on TV that everything's just so rosy and wonderful, and it may not necessarily be that way. Janice, I'll start with you.
I think that in our family we have a little tradition where we get people to get their little Christmas list together and send it off to people. But the list is made up of all these high item prices that you can buy from the store. And sometimes I look at the list and I just ignore it. And I go out and get like a box of checkers, or I'll get one of the games that we played when we were little. But I think that children playing these video games now, they're so sophisticated, and they move children within themselves. A lot of these games are not interactive. I think some of our most fun is coming with games that the whole family can play. Twister, charades. These games don't cost a lot of money, but the family loves it, and we can play them for hours.
And you can really have a good time.
And they're stress relievers.
Yes.
And the other thing, and I preach this to my kids as well as the kids I see in my practice, time management. Don't wait until the last minute when you're going to be completely overwhelmed.
Yes.
Have a schedule. This is what I'm going to do today. This is what I'm going to do tomorrow. You know, in preparing for Christmas, even purchasing gifts.
Yes.
I start at the beginning of December. I'm going to get these gifts this week. I'm going to get these gifts next week. So it's more manageable and you're not as overwhelmed.
Yes.
And that will reduce your stress
And
levels.
how about forgiving yourself if you don't finish that list?
Absolutely. Well, you know what? It's important that the list is realistic. You don't want a list of things that you can't accomplish, because then you feel like you're a failure.
Right.
So you want it to be realistic and manageable.
Okay, Virginia joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Virginia.
Hi, Barbara. This is Virginia.
Hi.
I had 13 people for Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm over 70, and so that's quite a few, and many were teenagers. What I do every time I have a large family group is I list all the little jobs that need to be done, from setting the tables to clearing the table, etc. and I put each one on a little piece of paper, and when people were ready to get to work, I had everyone choose their job, not choose, they pick a job out of the jar, and they do it. And they get the biggest kick out of it. This Thanksgiving, one of the guys who is very unartistic pulled the job of making the lettuce lady. And, and they can trade their jobs around. There was some trading around on mashing the potatoes.
Yes.
And it just makes for good fun. And the age range was from 12 to my age, and everybody had a great time.
Mm-hmm. That
and
is
nobody
a fantastic
was exhausted.
idea.
Virginia, I think that is fabulous because I have to say that I'm challenged in getting men to participate in cooking and cleaning. The guys want to sit in front of the football games and just be served all day. So I love your idea, and I'm going to try it. Thank you.
That's a
Well, I have an advantage in that I'm their mother.
Slight advantage.
And they all live out of town, so they feel if they get to come here for 3 days, they're very lucky.
This is Virginia with the League of Women Voters?
Yes,
is that correct? Okay, I just wanted to double check. Thank you
Always
so much.
Enjoy your program.
Thank you. Thank you so much for calling in, Virginia. We appreciate it. Definitely. Let's talk to Jean in Chesapeake. Hi, Jean. You're on the air.
Yes. My name is Jean, and I was listening to your program, and one of the things I wanted to ask the doctor was...
Jean, can you turn your radio down in the background for me?
Okay.
There you go.
And, I just wanted to just ask her about talk therapy because... I get a few calls, and just like the gentleman before, being in school, everybody is trying to get from one point to the next and thinking about finances and economics and now holidays. So what I've found to be effective is talk therapy, to just listen to what they have to say to me. And if I have something that I feel is effective that can help them, then I may respond. But it appears that, a lot of people that I interface with, they just want you to listen to what they have to say, and it makes them feel better.
So you don't necessarily have to respond. They just want you to listen to them. Okay.
And just, have something to say positive, like, just expect something wonderful to happen from what you're doing.
Okay. Jean, thanks so much for the call. We appreciate that. Janice, you want to respond?
I think it's good to be a good listener because I think that a lot of what Pat and I do is listen. I think the hard part is when people come with specific problems, when they stop talking, they really are looking for some guidance. And I think that's the next step. And I think that's why we really think that they should talk to a professional in many cases.
That's right.
Okay. Lori joins us from Norfolk. The calls just keep on coming. We love this. Hi, Lori. You're on the air.
It's Lolly.
Lolly. I'm sorry.
I am giving a shout out to Janis because we miss her in yoga class. and
thank you.
I'm saying that I have really done for myself this year is to put my specifically yoga, but all exercise first, because I was letting it go and noticing how I was resentful and I was gaining weight and all kinds of things were happening. And I realized I needed to put that sacred space first, and then a lot of other things became easier. And Janis, we missed you.
Thank you. I look forward to coming back in 2 weeks.
Okay. Good. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays.
But Lolly brings up a good point, and that is, how do you handle the stress of someone saying to you, especially if you are overweight, why are you eating that second piece of cake? Or you shouldn't do that. And it's a time when maybe you've decided that this is not the time that you're going to focus necessarily on that. Pat?
That's a really good point. And I think that is a very stressful situation for people who are a little bit overweight because most people are already a little bit sensitive to it without people pointing it out. So it's a very delicate issue. And for people who continue to do that, like Mom, who's always worried about it, I think you pull them aside and you tell them how it makes you feel and what you'd like from them. And you just establish that communication because sometimes people are just insensitive about that. They don't have a weight problem. They're insensitive about people and how they feel about their weight problem. So, if it's not addressed easily, then you pull them aside and you politely and kindly tell them what you'd like from them.
I think that would work with many people. That would not work with my mother. Okay. So I think that that's a great response. But I do think that, Barbara, you have a good question. I think that you have to say something like, I can't imagine why you would want me to answer that question now. But I think you need to come up with something that puts the person off and makes that person back away. Because, if you're overweight, you already know it. You definitely don't need other people mentioning it. But I don't think you need to air your dynamics with everybody who makes a comment to you. Right. So I think you need to come up with a response that will let that person know, I think that it's a terribly inappropriate question for you to ask. Thank you. And just walk away.
But along that same line, too, when you are in a family dynamic and you know that you're going to a home where you don't necessarily get along with that family member, what are some things that, because I think everybody has to take their own personal responsibility for how they're going to handle a situation. Do you just not go? How do you figure out how you're going to handle that, because you know that Uncle so-and-so and you just don't get along?
I think the movie Soul Food was great at showing some of those dynamics. But I do think that when you go into a family gathering, you need to think about who you get along with and who you don't. And I think you go spend time with the people you get along with. And you make a vow to yourself that you're not going to get into a long conversation with the people you don't. And you don't spend time with them. You don't get to the point where you're going to get into an argument or say something that you regret.
Don't allow
you just
them
stay
to
away.
engage you in
that's exactly the
that's
point.
Push your
that's
button.
exactly the point.
And I think it's a good skill to develop, to be around people who you don't necessarily click with, who you don't necessarily like, but you can still be cordial and appropriate.
Yes.
And so I think it's a good thing to be in a setting sometimes that's a little bit uncomfortable.
I think you grow.
You do.
But I think that people, because it's family, it takes on a different dynamic than it would if you were going into a some sort of social gathering with a stranger or an acquaintance that you may not be that comfortable with, because you would definitely avoid them. I think is there a different dynamic because it's family?
I think there is a different dynamic, but I think you can use the same resources to cope in that situation. And I'm sure there's likely to be more than one room. Find the next room, create a little bit of distance, but it's not a bad thing to be in a setting with people that you don't particularly get along with.
You're right.
Okay, 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Howard joins us from James City County. Hi.
Actually from Gates County, North Carolina.
James Gates County. I apologize.
Yes, we get WHRV quite
and we appreciate you listening.
Oh, we love you. We love you. One of the best things that ever happened to Slice Bread.
Thank you.
Listen, what I want to go over with, and I don't want to hold up much of your time, but I tell you, as a person who's had three people who've been sick and who need medical problems, medical help, sometimes this profession has a real bad image. And because I tell you, 10 years ago, I had a personal loved one who needed medical attention, and I tell you, for some reason, in smaller towns, if you're a young lady and we can't immediately find out what your problem is, then they label you as being depressed. And they almost insinuate, well, maybe it's this time of the month, or maybe you're just going through the latest thing, or all this. And a lot of times you get stuck with people, and they send you to for psychiatric support. In smaller towns, they send you what I call fast food psychiatric support. They see you in the office, and there may be 3 or 4 people there. And you'll see them one day, or you may see them for a month or 2 months, and the next thing you know, this particular psychiatrist is gone, and they label you with someone else. And you just feel like you're being shuffled around. You don't get the care you're supposed to have. Now, this is a true story. The person I know, they were diagnosed as having sleep problems, and they prescribed them Ambien, and so they still had sleep problems, not being able to sleep. They prescribed stronger Ambien. Then they found out upon further review, they put them in the hospital and said that what they actually had was sleep apnea. So as the Ambien was trying to keep the person asleep, the body was trying to wake the body up because the person would stop breathing.
Okay, so we're talking about misdiagnosis here. Howard, thanks.
And that happened. And like I said, I don't want to hold you up, Bob, but it's a positive attitude the way you have with this particular program. But a lot of people don't realize just how bad it is sometimes. And as far as going on the webpage or your company's directory trying to find a good psychiatrist, we can't see anything. All we can see is what degrees they have. We don't see how good they are, how many patients they treated, or how good they are, especially in that field. Unless you know a good physician who can refer you to who has almost an insider trading attitude and knows exactly who to send you to, who not to send to. Because I'm telling you, everybody may have a degree, but they do not always do well towards their patients.
You're absolutely right, Howard. We appreciate that call. But he does bring up a good point.
Yes.
How do you determine whether or not someone is the right person for you to go see? Janice, I'll start with you.
Howard, I know you're bringing up a real problem. I think that you're right. You need to find a physician that you can trust to make a referral to somebody who's going to be good. But I'm going to challenge you. I know this is not what you want to hear, but sometimes you may have to go out of your neighborhood. You may have to drive a distance. I have seen people who unfortunately have driven an hour and a half, 2 hours, sometimes longer. I don't think that should be the case, but you need to get a good professional. If someone you're seeing is not professional, is prescribing medication in a way that you don't think is valid, you need to stop and you need to find somebody else.
Yeah, you have to become an advocate for yourself.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Pat.
And that's one of the issues in very small towns, too. And there's a shortage of psychiatrists and mental health professionals. So in small towns, you may not be able to find the right match, the right person. And don't be afraid to venture out a little bit. And always consult with your primary care doctor because they usually are aware of good referrals in your area.
I would imagine, too, living in a small town when you already have the stigma of
it's hard
having to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist anyway, which shouldn't be a stigma, by the way, but that's the way people perceive it. And then when you're in a small town and everybody kind of knows what you're doing, and it becomes an issue. Okay, William joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, William.
Hello?
Hi, you're on the air.
Yeah. I just wonder if you can discuss a little bit the relationship between stress and atrial fibrillation.
Okay. I'll look to one of you.
I'll let Pat go as a medical doctor.
Well,
okay.
Thanks for the call, William.
Well, we know stress that's not managed well will have a physical impact on people in general across the board. So people who are stressed, who are depressed, who are anxious will have more physical symptoms, more headaches, more migraine headaches, more symptoms of atrial fibrillation, more difficulty controlling their diabetes, their blood pressure. So there is a direct connection between how you manage your stress and your physical health overall.
Okay. Did I answer your question?
Well, yes, sort of. My wife and I, due to the same circumstances, but both have atrial fibrillation, which would seem like it's a little bit unusual.
Well,
But atrial fibrillation is a medical condition, and hopefully you're seeing a doctor who manages it, and there are a variety of different techniques that are being used to manage that. And if your question is, can it be exacerbated by stress? It can. Medical conditions in general can. But you really should seek the advice of your medical professional or your cardiologist in managing that.
Okay, thanks for the call, William. We appreciate it. So the bottom line is this, that we just need to kind of go into this holiday season trying to take it easy.
Yes, but I would say this. I think what Pat just said about stress is so important.
Okay.
You need to control your stress all year long. I think it becomes more salient when we enter the holiday season because there's so much going on. And let's just be honest, coming up to Thanksgiving all the way until the 1st of January is a very stressful period. I think that people do need to exercise. They do need to eat properly. All the good things that you're trying to do, I think you should stick with it. You want to get enough sleep. You need to take time alone. I really advocate some time away from all the noise and responsibility for you to think about your life. And I think that each day, I like the idea that you talked about lists. I think that lists are excellent. I think each day people should start maybe the night before and just make a short list, not a lengthy list. I challenged my sister to make a list one time and she came up with 50 items. You need to have a short list with 3 to 5 items on your list that you'd like to accomplish. And I think you made the point before, forgiveness. You set the list out, you try to accomplish it. If you don't, you put things on the list for the next day. But there's a lot of self-forgiveness, there's a lot of planning, and there's a lot of organization. And you want to enjoy yourself each and every day, not just wait for building up all of your expectations to have this wonderful Christmas or this wonderful Thanksgiving. You want to enjoy your life each and every day.
Absolutely.
A wonderful day each and every day. I agree with what Janice just said. And the sleep, I keep harping on that because if you look at any of the studies, that reflect longevity, health. Over the years, sleep is always at the top of the list, so it's just crucial. And it's easy to get caught up with the holiday hoopla and not take the time to rest.
And speaking about getting caught up in the holiday hoopla, and we only have a couple minutes left, so it's probably unfair to bring this whole topic up, but if you notice someone who seems to be really struggling, especially if you think that they may become suicidal, or if they say, I just don't want to be here anymore. Pat, tell me, what do you say to them and what do you do so that you can make sure that they're okay?
Well, the first thing I do is I try to get people to see what is worthwhile in their lives. What are the things that are good? Yes. What are the things that they should want to live for? For a lot of women, it's their children. But you try to help them identify at least one thing that makes it worthwhile for them. And if you feel that they're in imminent danger, then you either take steps to have them hospitalized, committed, or you set up a very regimented follow-up schedule. I'd like to see you every other day for at least a few minutes, or connect them with a therapist who is working with you to see them on a regular basis. But if you feel that they're in imminent danger at that moment, then you have to take, more desperate measures to protect them.
And you should not be afraid to make that call if you need
Absolutely
to make that
not.
call.
As a matter of fact, we're obligated to do that.
Okay.
That's our responsibility.
I would say that the main thing is just to, I think Pat said everything you need to be said, except for you need to turn to someone and say, have you thought about hurting yourself? Because I always grew up thinking you were not supposed to ask people that question. But I think if you ask that question, 9 out of 10 times people will tell you yes, or will give you an answer that lets you know they're in imminent danger.
So that way that also gives them an opportunity
to tell you,
and to.
But
to come
you can
out.
pay attention when people start giving away their prized possessions. That's a sign. When people seem happier after seeming very depressed, that's another sign. So you really have to observe someone's behavior, but there's nothing wrong with just asking someone if they've thought about hurting themselves.
And when people start getting their things in order, like their insurance policies and their wills, and that's always a red flag.
Yes.
And we shall also check in with our seniors.
Yes.
During the holidays.
Because they can be very lonely and very sad.
Absolutely. Ladies, I can't believe the time is up for this particular segment.
It's been so much fun.
But
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pat King, who is a psychiatrist here in the area, and Dr. Janis Sanchez, who is a psychologist here in the area. And we will be right back.
Presents and cards are here. My world is filled with cheer and you. This Christmas, and as I look around, your eyes outshine the town they do. This Christmas, the fireside.
And welcome back. This region has an incredibly rich history when it comes to music. Legends like Ella Fitzgerald and Pearl Bailey are just two of the many artists whose musical talents blossomed right here in the 757. Now there's a film that highlights the influence that Hampton Roads musicians have had on the nation and the world. Our Lisa Godley recently sat down with the producers who have showcased Virginia's incredible musical talent in their documentary titled 7 City Legacy.
Known for her brilliant execution of scat singing, Ella Fitzgerald was considered one of the most influential vocalists of the 20th century. Her talent netted her 13 Grammys and a Presidential Medal of Freedom Award. Lady Ella was also born in Newport News, making her a 7-city legacy.
A tisket, a tasket, a brown and yellow basket. I send a letter to my mommy. On the way I dropped it.
I asked 7 City co-producer Danielle Coley about the film's historic look at musicians and the artistry that stems from the Hampton Roads region.
Our whole aim was to go over a span of several different decades. So we date back to the 20s and 30s with Ella Fitzgerald, Pearl Bailey.
Tired of the tears I've shed, tired of living in the rain.
a lot of them I didn't even know were originally from here, so that in itself was definitely amazing to me. And just to see their progress and how tied and integral they were to this area, particularly like Pearl Bailey. She has a library named after her in Newport News.
While the documentary may start with artists in the 1920s, it quickly moves down a timeline, bringing in artists from the civil rights era, like R&B singer and Portsmouth native Ruth Brown. And Norfolk's own General Norman Johnson, the lead singer of the group, chairman of the board. Co-producer Stephen Gale talks about his aha moment while researching and writing the film.
I'm not originally from here, so I didn't really know about the history of the Attucks Theater, and that it was considered the Apollo of the South. General Johnson was born practically next door to the theater and raised in that exact same neighborhood. And it was just like, wow, like this is really a legacy of music and a legacy of artistry and a preservation of culture.
That same music that has touched so many lives over the years continues to influence music today.
General Norman Johnson, he provided samples that artists of today are currently using. Kanye West has sampled him. Mary Mary has sampled him. John Mayer has sampled. Their music and their legacy is still integral to music today.
Artists like Antoine Henderson, who goes by the name Hen, can definitely relate to the impact artists from this region have had on up-and-coming performers.
I was a heavy Neptunes, Pharrell Williams and Chad Hugo. I was a big fan of their sound. Before I even knew that they were from this area, when I was living up in Connecticut, my last year living there, I was just, so fascinated by that sound and what they were doing.
Seven City Legacy would not be complete without a look at some of the modern day artists like rapper Keynote Speaker or WHRV's own Jay Sennett. Stephen Gale says their intention is to not only remind some and inform others of this region's rich history, but to help stimulate the arts back into the classroom and bridge the connection between Hampton Roads and its legacy. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And we are so proud that Stephen Gale, one of the producers on this movie, was our intern right here at Another View. So there you go. You never know where our students are going to wind up, and that's fantastic. Seven City Legacy premiered at the Attucks Theater back in October and will be shown again at the Attucks Theater Ballroom on December 15th at 8 p.m. Doors open at 7:30. Also at the Attucks Theater in Norfolk next Friday and Saturday, December 9 and 10, the Attucks Nutcracker. This high-energy, fun show takes the traditional Nutcracker storyline and gives it a very soulful twist. The production features students from the year-round arts education programming provided by the Crispus Attucks Cultural Center. Tickets are available through Ticketmaster, and the show is at 7:30 p.m. on both Friday and Saturday nights. Christians and Muslims come together this Sunday, December 4th, to share commonalities and celebrate diversity. Bishop B. Courtney McBath of Calvary Revival Church will speak at the Mosque William Salam on 35th Street in Norfolk. The event takes place at 1 o'clock, and seating is limited, so please arrive early. Imam Vernon Fareed says that all people of all faiths and all races are invited to attend. Call 757-626-0734 for more information. Thank you for spending this hour with Another View. If you missed any part of our program, visit anotherviewradio.org and download the podcast. And while you're there, sign up for our eView newsletter, a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. Next week, the Another View Roundtable. Need I say more? For producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Brian Hughes, and Brett Lewis, who answers our phones, I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next Friday for Another View.